Let's do it.
All right. Hello. This is Dr. Sam Dubé for the Etiquette Show, and I'm joined with another New York City 2021 mayoral candidate. Today, I am with Aaron Miles, an independent candidate. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I like to use my full entire name, so we're going to say, just from me, Aaron Benjamin Miles, and I'm honored to be a guest on the Etiquette Show, you call it?
Yes,
with,
I did.
Dr.
I did.
Dubé.
I did.
Yes,
So
and
I am with.
The opportunity to give my, my platform.
Wonderful. I'm with Aaron Benjamin Miles, independent candidate. So, Aaron, you mentioned to me earlier, you said, I am not a politician. So why don't we start with your background? Why don't you tell us about yourself, maybe your childhood all the way through your education, your work experience, and tell us what experiences molded you into the man that you are today.
Okay, well, I was born 1969, Manhattan French Hospital. But I was raised all my life in Brooklyn, New York. So I'm a Brooklynite. Single family household. Single parent household with just my mother and my brother. I never met my father. He died, I guess, shortly after I was born. And I could say I had a very pleasant childhood. I have a very big, loving family, even though we didn't have a lot of stuff. They were always supporting one another. And I can just remember a lot of things like picnics and going to Coney Island and the beaches on the holidays and hanging out. I have so many cousins, maybe 40 cousins that I grew up with. But I do remember a lot of struggling. I have these memories that I don't really like so much of seeing my mother crying a lot. About things that she wasn't able to do for us, or couldn't afford to do. And so I guess that played a big part in the type of person that I am today in terms of not liking to see women struggling, not liking to see families struggling with kids. And I went to public school, starting on PS 91. I went to Mayoral Jackson after that, George Wingate High School. I was Mr. Wingate for 3 years, which is a physical fitness competition. You got to be in shape, go on stage, pose, and all of that. But I was also in the dean's list and the principal's list. So I was really into my work. I wasn't into hanging out in the halls with a lot of my, constituents. And so they kind of considered us geeky or nerds or whatever like that. But I'm also a product of the streets, even though the streets wouldn't, they wouldn't let me participate in the street activity. Hold on 1 second, the training passes. I don't know if you can hear me when that's doing that. Let's give that a second. I was out campaigning trying to get signatures for my petition so I can stay on that ballot.
Yeah, we can still hear you, Aaron.
You hear me? Okay. So, being raised in the streets around a lot of street elements, I didn't want to go that route because they always seem to have money and be able to do things for themselves that I wasn't able to do. But they kind of considered me the black sheep. They wouldn't let me be in the streets doing that. They would always tell me, stay away from the streets. If I needed something, I could come to them and ask them. And I should stay on the path that I was on with school or whatever, that kind of stuff. So the streets kind of guided me that way as well. But being from the streets, I have a side of me that I don't like being disrespected. And that's very important to say because I've experienced a lot of that with what I call the abuse of authority with a lot of city agencies. Being on welfare, first as a client, and then I ended up becoming a web worker, which means work experience program where you work for your benefit. And from there, I became an actual social worker for the human resource program. And a weird story behind that is when I was a web worker, I wouldn't dress as a wet worker. I would dress how you see me now with a bow tie, a white shirt on, but I would wear a sweatsuit, probably like that. People were always curious why I dressed like that when I was cleaning the bathrooms and things like that and cleaning toilets. And I said I wasn't dressing for where I was. I was dressing for where I planned to be. And they never understood that until I came in the same building one day as a social worker. And everybody was like so surprised because they was like, "You look so familiar. I know your face, but I don't really know you. But I know you from." And I was like, "I used to work here cleaning the bathroom all the time." Then everybody just automatically remembered me because they remembered me dressing the way I dressed. This bow tie is kind of a signature thing for me. People know me for the bow tie, and then they remember me always saying I wasn't dressing for the job I was doing. I was dressing for the job I was preparing myself for, which was an actual social worker. So I actually got there, but I eventually got terminated from that job just recently when my campaign started, and that was because I don't allow people to abuse me. And in the culture with these agencies, they tend to want you to be submissive and allow them to get away with this abuse. They don't follow policy procedure. They're not following the contracts and agreements between the workers and the union and the agency. And I actually went and studied all of that, and I started to realize they're not following the rules. So I would be very not aggressive, but I'd be very outspoken in terms of how they would treat me, and I would let them know. I can't speak for everybody else. If they want to let you do that and get away with it, it's fine. That's them. You can't do that to me because it makes me feel away. I'm a grown man. You're a grown man. We have to respect each other as grown-ups. I'm not a child. And one of the things that I remember saying to a lot of my, I guess you call superiors, people from upper management, would be, I'm going to give you respect voluntarily. But for you to give it back is not optional. If you don't give it back voluntarily, I take that. And that always seemed to ruffle their feathers a certain way. And I guess everybody kept trying to see where the boundaries of that statement was. And so for 5 years, because I worked there for about 6 years, for 5 years out of the 6 years, I bumped heads with these people, keep trying to see who could get away with violating me, and nobody could. So eventually, they terminated me. First, they suspended me for 30 days, immediate 30-day suspension without pay. And before I got out of the suspension, I received a letter from Stephen Banks saying I was terminated. So the suspension went right into the termination. But I believe everything happens for a reason. It happened just as my campaign was starting. I believe the ancestors wanted me to have the time that I needed to campaign rather than processing cases for the Human Resource Administration, even though I like doing that, helping my fellow New Yorkers pay their rent, because that's what I did. I processed packages so that people's rents could be paid for the year or whatever, one-shot deal or whatever, these types of things. And they could never criticize my work ethic. Anywhere I went, I was always one of the best workers. And not only that, the way I got into the politics was I stumbled onto something called the AMI, Area Median Income. And I realized I wasn't earning the area median income, but we're mandated by these agencies to live in New York City when you get the job. And it's weird because to me, the city or the state, whatever you want to call it, they create the area median income, but then they also establish what our salary is. How can you mess that up where those two things don't sync? Especially if you're going to mandate me to live here to take the job. You should at least pay me enough to afford to meet your area median income. So when I went around to my other coworkers asking them about this, a lot of them were unfamiliar with the area median income. And as I would explain it, I would just say, instead of asking how much they made, because I thought that was too personal, I would just say, are you making this area median income, which was $60,000 to $80,000, depending on if you're an individual or family. Nobody was making this area median income. And they were so impressed with how I presented these facts that they started telling me they wanted me to become their voice. They wanted me to represent them as a group of workers within the union. I told them I wasn't interested because I wasn't interested in politics. That's just something I stumbled on. I wanted to, find out if anybody else was getting that. And then I wanted to see if we could kind of organize and address that issue. You can't mandate us to live somewhere and we're not meeting your area median income unless we're doing a bunch of overtime and all this other stuff. We have lives too. So that didn't make sense to me. But they went on their own and put me on the ballot. I didn't know they did that. And I ended up winning that race, and I became a union delegate. I went to the union 3 times to the meeting, and I was very disappointed because at the meetings, it was more like entertainment. They were partying and eating, and I was like, listen, we have a bunch of workers that have issues and problems. I'm not coming here to party. I'm coming here to see if we can figure out how to fix some of our co-workers and my constituents' problems. But the union, as I went, I realized it's a collective negotiating machine. It doesn't represent individuals. It represents us as a collective. So if you come to them as an individual with a problem that everybody else is not dealing with at the time, they're useless to you. So I didn't like that, and that's when I stopped coming to their meetings, and I started to think, where could I elevate myself to have a little more influence to address these issues? And first, I considered running against the president, Mr. Wells, to become the president of the union because I felt very confident that I could beat him. But then I said, he's like a figurehead and he's being paid by the agency. And so they're not really representing our interests. Even though they get dues from us, they're not going to bite the hand that's feeding them, which was the agency. They're getting the biggest bulk of their money from the agency. So I realized they're not representing us. They're intercepting our complaints so that we don't go outside the agency and complain to somebody who might do something. They were acting as an interceptor. And as long as our complaint stayed inside the walls of the agency, I said it's like Vegas rules. The house never loses. So it doesn't matter how much evidence you got. That's already pre-established for them to win. So then I considered trying to become the commissioner of the agency, like Stephen Banks. But I said, you have to be appointed to that position. And I'm not a brown noser. I don't know how to do that. And I would never be appointed to a position like that by anybody. So I said, I need a position I could be elected to by the people, how I was elected as a delegate. And that's when I stumbled onto the position of mayor. The mayor, you're elected by the people. But not only that, you get to appoint all of these commissioners of all of these agencies. DSS, HRA, DHS, the police agency, sanitation. You, as the mayor, you elect all of the commissioners of every agency. And so, from right there, that really got my attention. So I said, I'm going to run for mayor. That was 2 years ago before now. 2 years ago, I started my campaign, and I started on social media with these, like Facebook and Instagram, with a page called Before Becoming Mayor of NYC. And it was a docuseries intended to follow my daily progress towards where we are now. So if people go towards the Facebook or Instagram, so before becoming mayor of NYC, you'll see the whole 2 years of what I was doing. From when I was working at HRA to when I lost my job, because I put everything on there. When they was serving me the papers to be terminated, I was posting it on those websites. So I said, I need this to be transparent. I need people to see how these guys abuse their authority, because that was a, what do you call it? I forgot what you call that. But it was a termination, but they terminated me without any cause.
Wrongful termination?
Wrongful termination, exactly. There's the word. And so I wanted people to really see behind the scene, because you don't get to see this stuff. And this is where we have the problem why people don't come together, because a lot of times you might think you're the only one experiencing these things. Because one of the big tools that America used to abuse their authority is called confidentiality. That's why they have confidentiality, because they can do a lot of things in the dark that you're not privy to. And so you don't see how they're bending the rules or breaking the rules or altering the game in their favor. And so that's why the last election with Donald Trump was so catastrophic for him, because there were too many eyes and there was very little confidentiality. They need that cloak of darkness to do what they want to do. As you see, he wanted to go and make them find the votes he needed to win. But he couldn't get the confidentiality to talk to him, but he's so bold, he just said it on the phone, not knowing he was being recorded, and told him he wanted him to go do that. But there's a lot of things that are handled like this. Now, for me, that's why I think I'm such a good fit for right now, because I don't care what people, I'm kind of like Trump. I like Trump in the fact that you couldn't tell him what to do. He was going to do what he wanted to do. And that's why I believe he was elected, because he was a disruptor and he wasn't going to play by anybody else's rules. Only thing that messed him up is he was too selfish for himself. He didn't even serve the Republicans that supported him. He was firing a bunch of his own people. And that's the only thing I think really messed that man up. I believe he could have been a 3-term president if he would have been for the people with that attitude. So that's my intention. I'm not going to be asking questions. I'm coming to be a disruptor. I'm coming to be a regulator, and I'm coming to be an enforcer. We don't need no new rights. We don't need no new laws. There's enough of them already. The problem is who's enforcing them. There's no enforcers, you know, and they're pacifying us every time they create another law. That's another way of them saying, we're not going to enforce the rights you already have. So let's say we can create a new one that might make you feel a little pacified for the moment. But we're not going to play that game with me as the mayor. When I come in, they're not going to like me. I'm not coming to be the mayor of corporations. I'm coming to be the mayor of New York. The first mayor of New York. Even though it's 110th mayor, I'm coming to be the first mayor of New York. And I'm going to fix a lot of these problems that New Yorkers are having. And I'm not going to be asking for the changes to happen. They're going to have to deal with somebody who knows how to dictate and get what he wants. From the streets, though, there's going to be a lot of a street mentality, like with the NYPD. I love the cops. We need the cops because, as you said, there's a lot of crime. Feel me? But you don't address crime by keep throwing cops at it. You have to alter the conditions that's creating the crime. The conditions that's creating the crime is people usually not having a legitimate way to pay for themselves and their families to support themselves. So if I remove these barriers to legitimate opportunity, from right there, you're going to reduce a lot of crime. Because what I call these intelligent street criminals, they're not going to let you sit there and let them make themselves and their families suffer. They're going to do what they have to do. But if they have a choice, they're not going to choose putting their lives on the line to a legitimate opportunity if they could pick which one to support themselves and their family. So even though I'm going to be cutting the police force, I'm cutting the police force drastically. Because the problem we have there is, one, I talk to a lot of police officers all the time. And they tell me, I asked them, I said, is it dangerous putting on that uniform? I'm going to walk somewhere where it's not so much of these trains. Yeah.
Okay.
I just walked into the supermarket for a minute. Maybe they won't mind me here.
Okay. So, for going from cleaning washrooms to social worker to wrongful dismissal. Union leader, wrongful dismissal, and then deciding to run for mayor as a disruptor, a regulator, and an enforcer. Yes. This is quite a path. And you've answered a couple of the questions I wanted to ask you regarding how you chose to run for mayor and why you choose to run as an independent, and now talking about how to deal with crime, because you're in agreement that violent crime has increased significantly in New York City, and you were talking about not throwing more cops at it and drastically making some cuts. So can you elaborate a little bit on that, and also about removing barriers to opportunity you just mentioned in order to reduce crime? Can you talk more specifically to this? Because I wanted to ask you about your platform and the priorities of your platform, and you've already started to speak to this. So please go ahead.
Right. Those two things are connected. So I talk to a lot of police officers when I'm on the street, and I tell them I take the time to talk to them because they're usually voters too, and their vote counts. So I tell them my intentions, and I try to be as transparent as possible. I tell them I'm about to be your boss's new boss, and when I get in that Gracie Mansion, I got a lot of plans for the NYPD. We're going to be changing a lot of things in there. I said, for one, do you feel like it's dangerous putting on that uniform every day? And all of them agree that it is. And I tell them my opinion why I believe it's like that. I say I believe it's like that because you have a lot of co-workers, which I call bad apples, who get to put on the same uniform and badge. And when they put on that uniform and badge, they do these crazy things that they would never do without the uniform and the badge on. And the reason why they do that is because they know if something goes wrong, all of those good officers have to come to their rescue and rescue them. You feel me? So I said, what I'm going to be doing when I get in office is I'm removing all of those bad apples. And as a worker for city agencies, I'm very familiar how everything is documented. So I know they have to document everything that they do. So I can follow a paper trail and find all the bad cops I'm looking for. I'm only looking for cops that's guilty of unjustified excessive force and unjustifiable deadly force. That's all who I'm concerned about right there. And through that paperwork, I'll find them all. Then I also tell them there's another problem in your point of entry, which you might consider your human resource department. Because I always say, how do these bad cops keep getting into our police force? Because there's always a bunch of new young ones. And I said, somehow they're getting into that point of entry because every cop got to go through human resource. And my hypothesis is there's a group of people in there who are hiring these bad cops. Now, I don't want to accuse them of anything, but I'm going to say either they don't know what they're doing or they know all too well what they're doing. Either way, they're unfit to be in there. And when I pull up that paperwork on my bad cops, who I said are the unjustified excessive and unjustified deadly force, I can easily link them directly to the people that hired them in that human resource department. And once I identify them, they're going too. And this is where the police usually like this little description that I'm giving you. I say, after I get rid of all of these bad apples, you're going to get a historic pay raise that you never expected. Because all of the cops that I get rid of, I'm going to redistribute their salary to the police officers who are left. This way, no politician can ask me where the money is coming from. It's there already. They're just giving it to the wrong people. And so there we'll have cops that are happy getting the money that they probably feel they deserve for a very dangerous job that they're expected to do every day. By me doing something so unprecedented and so drastic, by getting rid of so many cops when I come into office, instead of hiring so many cops, which is what most mayors do, they usually hire an extra 100,000 cops or whatever, which uses the budget instead of rewarding the cops that's been there already, doing the job, putting their lives on the line. They'll absorb the budget, giving it to new cops to increase the force. Well, I'm going to cut the force so I can reward those cops that are there, right? And so they're going to be happy. But at the same time, I have to say to myself, we have less cops to address the crime that's on the street. We don't want the cops to deal with a dangerous situation. That's where my reducing crime comes into play. I'm going to reduce crime by removing legitimate barriers to legitimate opportunity, and I'm going to make a covenant with the street. I'm going to be the first mayor to do that. I'm going to tell the street that if you elect me mayor of New York City, I'm going to remove the barriers to legitimate opportunity so you can have a legitimate way to afford to take care of yourselves and your family in exchange for you abandoning all street crime behavior and activity. That's the deal. Now, when I do that, you're going to have a lot of legitimate or intelligent street hustlers who take me up on my offer that's going to get that 9-to-5 job. The only ones you're going to have left doing crime are the knuckleheads or these delinquents that think it's cool to be a criminal. They like their image rather than the opportunities that come with that.
Aaron,
the cops won't be the cops won't be dealing with the cops won't be dealing with them by themselves, because those guys that take those legitimate jobs still the same people. They're going to tell those guys on the street that think they moved up the food chain, well, I'm at work and my kids are outside playing, or they're coming out to the store. And
can
I hear
you be, Aaron, can you be a little bit more specific as to how you want to remove the barriers to opportunity? What is your plan to remove the barriers of opportunity in order to make this exchange for reducing crime and in exchange for, as I was saying, removing these barriers of opportunity? How do you plan to remove these barriers of opportunity?
Okay. To me, it's simple, but it's complicated at the same time, right? There's an unspoken discrimination. There's an unspoken prejudice. It's something there that's preventing qualified people from getting access to legitimate opportunities. I have to address those. I have to come up with my specific plan. Maybe I'll have to create some incentives for businesses to give these individuals these opportunities, like some type of, what do you call them? Subsidization for the job or something. I haven't quite figured that out, but I know there's a barrier there that's preventing us from getting those jobs, because I was one of the people in that boat. It took me, okay, put it like this. My job at HRA was my first job. That's my first job I ever had in my life. I mean, I had one job when I was a teenager at Roy Rogers, but in between that, maybe 30 years, no job. I'm always having it, going the street, trying to hustle. And then I eventually started my own business in the fashion industry, got successful with that, but then I got robbed for over $100 million.
Can you tell us about that? How did that happen?
Well, I'm very effective with creative design. I started with a gentleman, his name was Patrick Ying. First, I actually started with a gentleman, his name was Steve Tankler. He was a salesperson for a company called Get Used. He noticed the talent that I had, and he kind of guided me on what I needed to do to create a real functional clothing line that he could present to the store's buyers. I followed his advice. He took my designs. He went to Macy's. He came out of there with a $250,000 order. So he said, now we have paper, but we don't have the money to produce the order. So then he went to look for a partner who could back the order with the money to produce the order. And we ran into our first financial partner. His name was Patrick Ying. And we worked together. Patrick Ying invested about $2 million, got me a showroom, a studio. I did my first line for the magic show. We went to the magic show, and we got some kind of award for a new company that for doing so much business, especially abroad in Europe and Japan. And so, well, you know, I have to give Patrick credit because he did these billboards. He put us on the buses, and we had a very big presence. And I did what you call a teaser ad, because I was copying Calvin Klein. I noticed he was doing commercials on TV with models pushing each other on swings, but they had no clothes on. Oh. They was just naked. And so I said, I like that, but how can I make that urban? So I said, what would people think of when they think of what would they see to think of urban? So I thought, you know, black females are really known for their shape with their behind. So I found a model who had a really exaggerated shape with her behind, and I got a male model, and I painted them all black, you know, white background. I set him down, and she was standing in front of him sideways so you could see her profile, and it looked like a silhouette. And that ad was what he put all over, and it just got so popular that we made a very strong entrance into the fashion game at that first magic show. Well, anyway, we did pretty well, but I wasn't following the money. I thought, once I'm your partner, I don't have to worry about the money. You're going to give me my share of the money when it's time, yeah? It doesn't work like that. When people collect millions of your dollars in their bank account, it's very difficult for them to just transfer it to you. They'd rather fight you for that money. So I learned that from him. And so I had to leave him, and I went with some other gentlemen, these two Russian Jews from a company called Comet Intercontinental. But before I got with them, I met a gentleman called Norman Weisfeld and his brother Bruce Weisfeld. And they offered me a bunch of money to work with them, but they were explaining something to me about a sliding scale that I didn't understand, which was the more money we get, the less my percentage would be, but it'll be a larger number. And I didn't think that was how it should go. I felt like if I'm doing well and we keep making money, my percentage should go up. But I was naive, I was young. But I'm only telling you that part because by me refusing that deal was how FUBU came along. Have you ever heard of FUBU?
No, I'm not sure I'm hearing the word right. I know what a fugu fish is, but I haven't heard.
No, FUBU was a clothing brand. You heard of Damon John, right? The Shark Tank dude.
I think I have, yes.
Okay, that was his clothing brand that he got known for. And he got his deal with Norman and them because I refused that deal. Because we were all shopping ourselves at the same time. And I don't want to talk about those dudes, but
okay. Sorry, you broke up there momentarily, Aaron.
I broke up with them, and then I went to Comet. Comet did a little bit with me, and then they breached their contract because they got to deal with Jay-Z, with Rockaway. So then I was out of that. But before we broke up, we did a license with a company overseas to sell my clothes in Europe because they liked the name because of the Sir Benny Miles. They said it was so popular, but our silhouette was different. Our clothes in America was very big and baggy and oversized. They said in Europe they didn't dress like that. Their clothes was more refined. So they said they just wanted the right to use the name and create the line, the clothes themselves. So we gave it to them, and what happened was they went and trademarked my name in Europe without me knowing. And so when I got broken up with my partners, I never followed them. And to make a long story short, they end up selling my clothing trademark to Mark Echo. And Mark Echo went and made over $100 million. I was trying to research it and follow them, but every time I got lawyers, they would evaporate because, these guys got all of this money. They could easily give a lawyer $50,000 or $100,000 and say, go away, while I'm trying to get them to take the case on contingency because I can't keep retaining lawyers for $25,000 a pop. And so I could never catch them. And so these guys made all this money with my trademark, put my name all over the place, and that's how I lost all that money.
That's quite a story, Aaron, and must have left a very bitter taste in your mouth.
Very, 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 very. But it also made me acknowledge the fact that I had a talent, that the industry appreciated, and so I'm in the midst of kind of bringing that back. This is actually some of my design I have on now.
Okay.
And so I still design, but that's taking a backseat to the politics for a minute because, there's too many urgent issues that, to me, I can't sit back anymore and wait for the right person to come and fix this for us.
Okay, so let's talk about those urgent issues. Let's talk about those urgent issues and your prioritization of those issues and what you plan to do about them. So please go ahead. What are some of those urgent issues? One of them is
the first one was just the abuse of authority of agencies across the board. The culture is really disrupt because it starts from the top. If there's not a good example made at the top to trickle down, whatever bad example there is at the top is going to trickle down. And I think that's why there's an abusive culture within these agencies because I believe whoever's at the top of these agencies are abusing their workers under them, and it's just going down to the bottom people who end up being the consumers or the clients. We don't have anybody under us, so we're stuck with all that negative energy, and that's what's really compromising people's quality of life. And I think that needs to be addressed by me putting the right person at the top to make the right example. Well, actually, it'll start with me. If I'm the mayor, it's going to start with my example. And I'm going to let them know. My example is I'm going to respect you. It's voluntarily. And I'm not going to stand for you disrespecting anyone that's under you for any reason, if it's unnecessary. And that should trickle down. One of the big things for me is, I'm sure you're familiar with and see all of this. There's a big crying out of the excessive deadly force being used by police. Now, I put it like this, man. Nobody will care for these criminals.
Can you repeat that? Sorry. Sorry, Aaron. Could you repeat that? Sorry, you got distorted.
Nobody would care about cops using deadly force on violent criminals.
Okay.
We think that's what the police are for. What people are very upset about is the excessive force and the deadly force being used on innocent people without justification. Let me tell you what's really got people upset and frightened. You don't know what the behavior pattern is expected to keep you out of that harm's way. if there's no pattern to how they're selecting who they're using this deadly force on, that makes everybody feel like their number could come up at any given time and they could become that victim. That is exactly how I feel. Why I'm not going to sit around and wait for them to call my number. I'm taking the offensive approach. I'm running for mayor. I'm going in there. I'm finding all of these corrupt cops before they find me, and I'm getting them out of there. And I'm going to establish a way for people to know there's a way to behave to stay out of that harm's way. I also have an idea to create a new agency called the Commission of the Human Rights Guard. Because police aren't really hired to protect citizens. Police are hired to protect property. They're hired to protect property, businesses, and anything that they deem valuable, which unfortunately aren't the citizens. Now, I would create another agency called the Commission of the Human Rights Guard to specifically protect the human rights and the civil rights of the citizens of New York. They would not be commissioned to interfere with any police activity. They would get on the scene when they're called. They would have their own number, which I would try to make 000. See, because a lot of people panic. And when cops are violating them, they call 911. They call them more backup for the cops who are already abusing them. But when you're in a panic mode, you don't know. You're just looking for help. So I'm going to make them a number. It's going to be 000. When those Commission of the Human Rights Guard come, they're going to be better armed, better armored, and they're going to have better cars than the police. And they're going to come, and they have one objective: to make sure everyone makes it to court. You will make it to court. It's not the court. It's not the police officers' right to become judge and jury for any reason. So they'll come on the scene. They'll say, "I don't know what you did. I don't know if you're innocent. I don't know if you're guilty. All I'm saying is I'm going to guarantee you make it to court for them to decide." And they will advise the cop to put your weapon away while I'm on the scene. Otherwise, you're going to have to deal with me. You're going to have a different problem. While I'm on the scene, you don't need the gun out, because now I'm going to have your back. If this perpetrator gets out of control, I'm here to help you now. But at the end of the day, my mandate is to make sure this citizen that you're accusing of something gets his day in court where the judge can decide whether he's guilty or innocent. That's not your job. So put your gun away, otherwise we're going to have something. Or out of uniform.
Okay.
See, people would be so happy to have an agency like that.
An independent agency named the Commission of Human Rights Guard to ensure, better armed and armored than the police, to potentially intervene in a situation to ensure that the alleged perpetrator gets their day in court.
Exactly.
While at the same time backing up the police and protecting them from an alleged perpetrator.
Right.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
And what I was going to say to you earlier about the police officers with cutting them, that drastic action of record number of cutting police rather than hiring police, which is usually what's done when new mayors come in, it would be so unprecedented that it would create a condition that now allows the NYPD to finally rebuild the relationship with the community. The community never seen something like that. So if they all of a sudden heard a bunch of cops were cut, and then we put together a platform and a campaign to say how we would like to rebuild the relationship between the NYPD and the community, and we've gotten rid of what we would call all of the bad apples, people would be open to that. Now you can rebuild a real relationship with the community and the police without all of this suspicion, without all of this trust. And then if you add that Commission of the Human Rights Guard, just in case we forgot a few or we missed a few, where people are in a situation where they're feeling abused and violated, and they can call 000 when somebody comes on the scene to be a witness, and make sure their lives ain't gonna be taken on the spot. They're gonna get to go to court. You know how much people will cooperate? You know what kind of anxiety that would bring down in New York City? There's too much anxiety. And people have a right to be anxious because nobody's saying this, but people from communities of color are traumatized by police. So when the cop comes on the scene and he have on that uniform, yeah, somebody acting kind of strange. You know why? He's traumatized because he sees you and he sees so many videos on TV and on the internet of you killing people unjustifiable. So now he has this thing where he don't know what could happen. He don't know how to behave to keep himself safe because there's nothing that we've seen so far that you can do to say, okay, now he won't take that excessive force towards me because I'm following this protocol. Come on, man.
So, Aaron, if I may interject, Aaron, please. Then how do you feel? How do you think the New York City Police Force would react to the creation of this new agency and their mandate?
I think the good cops will have no problem with it. I think the cops, because I don't think it's not by accident, you know? The cops that's violating people like they're doing, this is who they are. They already know they're going to do that. They come out every day looking. That's why we need to go through investigating these cops' records. If you investigate the records, you're going to see a lot of cops have excessive records of the same behavior towards different people in the community. And it gets they get enabled. They get enabled the more they're able to do it and not penalized for it. This qualified immunity thing, they feel like they could do what they want and get away with it. Now, a good person with a good, just a good person, I don't have to define it. You know what I mean? You, for instance, you don't look like it's in your nature to just go rough somebody up. To just go abuse somebody else how you would want to be treated, right? It's outside your character. Feel me? For people that's not cut from this cloth, that's why my campaign is called Rise of the Good People. Not Rise of the Black people, not Rise of the Colored people. Because good people come in all colors, all sizes, all shapes, all sexes, all religions. You feel what I'm saying? And you have to know how to identify each other by, it's a spiritual thing. You have to be a judge of character. Because there are black people that I don't trust because they'll hurt me just as easy as one of these bad white people or anybody that's bad. You can't judge people like that. You have to judge a person by, are they cut from the same cloth you're cut from? And if they are, you need to look out for them. Good people are an endangered species that need to be protected. Our voices are much lower, but there's more of us. Bad people have big mouths. When I was working at the Human Resource Administration, and we had to schedule appointments for people to go see apartments, we never saw none of the good people. And the landlords was always complaining about the ones we brought to the interview or the seeing, the viewing. And I started to realize none of the good people are coming because they don't want to cross paths and run into the bad people and get in conflict with them. Bad people come out of their rooms noisy, loud, already starting problems. You know what the good people do? They go back in their rooms. They say, I'm not going out there. I'm not going to go try to schedule me a viewing. I'd rather stay out of the way. You see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying, Aaron, and you can't really argue with the idea of, you know, good versus bad, but in the implementation, is it that cut and dry, or is it more of a spectrum of behavior that where it would be maybe challenging to assess who the good people are and who the bad people are? And in addition, when you talked about documentation and following the paper trail, how would you know that documentation would be objective? And when you talked about the initial entry way into the police force, and that people there were letting bad apples get in, how do you know that A, that's intentional, or B, that's even an issue and perceivable, right? There, I see how there could be difficulty in implementing, And I'm just being, a devil's advocate here, right? Because I mean, the idea of good versus bad, I mean, that's universal, right? But then in the assessment, this might be challenging, right? And you might get people saying, well,
yeah, it's challenging, but it has to start from somewhere, right?
We have to try to
find a way to address this problem, because the problem is now starting to affect the masses, because it's a chain reaction. It's a domino effect. You feel me?
Yes.
As the lower level of people continue to become more and more agitated, they're going to take that on anybody. They're going to take that out on anybody who's around them. So we have to bring that agitation level down. Now, I was thinking about using a 3-strike method that they already use. So how they have the 3-strike method, 3 strikes and you out. Well, maybe that's what I would use on a lot of these assessments. I'm not going to look for one account or one instance of doing this this bad behavior. I'm looking for a repetition of. It's a little different. I wanted to do that with the excessive force, where if you have 3 instances of this excessive abuse of authority, unjustified, you put on my list to be eliminated. But I feel a little differently towards that with the deadly force. We don't have the luxury to allow the police to make that kind of a mistake even once, because there's no you can't repair that. Once you take the person's life, that's the end. That's it. And cops can't be trying to use the excuse that I was scared, I was nervous. That comes with the job. Once you sign on to be a cop and you take that money for that job, that's part of the job. You're supposed to be more disciplined to control your emotions in these more difficult situations than the average New Yorker. The average New Yorker should be able to get away with that. I was scared, I was nervous. But they make it more, they're more strict against the citizens than they are the cops. Cops are telling people they should be calm, they should cooperate and listen to every command that they're giving them. Why they traumatized? Why they having a knee put on their back? Why they having, come on, man, that don't make sense. You were trained to face danger. You knew that was the job. If you're not comfortable with it, don't take that job. Don't take that job.
Aaron, what are some other issues near and dear to your heart that you feel should be a priority and that are a priority in your campaign?
Okay, besides the abuse of the authority of these agencies?
Yes, and already the increase in crime we've already spoken about, yes.
Fixing the economy. We need to
can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? It distorted again.
We need to stimulate the economy. We need to get the economy back up and running, right? But we need to do that from a bottom-up method, from the bottom up. It's called the economy. I kind of define this as something that will be dysfunctional if you eliminate transactions. An economy has to have transactions, yes? You eliminate the transactions if you take the money that's supposed to stimulate the economy and give it right to the corporation. That money is supposed to go to the consumer and be distributed to the corporations from the consumer through transactions. That's how an economy repairs itself. If you skip that process and give it to the consumers to stimulate consumer spending, and you give it directly to the corporations you want to have it, you really didn't stimulate the economy. You just gave the money to corporations you felt you wanted to have the money. And I guess they do that to control who gets the money, because you don't know who's going to get it when you give it to consumers. You don't know who they're going to want to spend the money with. But still, that's the way it's supposed to go. So for me, what I want to do is take that money and give it to the consumers. Now, a lot of people talking about creating jobs and all of this stuff. I'm going to tell you from personal experience. For years, I'm 51 years old. Every time they had an election and these politicians went through this and said they was going to create new jobs, I stayed on the side of the unemployed. I never got any of those new jobs they talk about they created. So that's not a good message to me. Barack Obama tried to do something to stimulate the economy. He tried to say, we need a pipeline to get this money down to the people. You can't use the pipelines that's already existing because corporations know these pipelines and they easily intercept the money before it makes it to the bottom. Unless you use pipelines that's already directly connected to the bottom. To me, the biggest pipeline connected to the bottom of the most people is welfare. I'm going to change how the welfare system is structured. What I want to do right now, if you're on welfare and you're a single individual, and I'm on welfare right now because I got fired from my job, feel me? So I'm getting public assistance right now. I'm probably the first man that's on welfare. But that's okay, because I like to be involved in it because I can see the problems more clearly. Just like when I was working for HRA, I told them, I like working in the position I'm at because every time the big upper management people come down, they always pre-announce they're coming. And you do all this stuff and make everything politically correct before they get there, and they never see the problems that they would need to know need to be fixed because they masked them. But as a worker being right there, I saw how they was doing that, so I was like, okay, so I know the problems I have beforehand, and I know if I become mayor, I'm never going to announce my visit. I'm going to put on my street clothes. I'm going to come through. You're going to think I ain't supposed to be there, and I'm going to see everything that I need to see. But anyway. Instead of people getting a head of household of one person, they get $91 in cash. A grown person get $91 to live on. That's ridiculous, and that'll never help the economy. I'm changing that to $2,000. Head of household, $2,000 for anybody on public assistance. And then anybody else on your caseload, they're going to get $250. Because, you know, a lot of these mothers, they have a lot of children. 3 kids, 4 kids. So I didn't want to make it too much money going to them while they're just sitting at home, because to me, that's not going to be logical, right? So if I get $2,000 to make sure an individual to get this $2,000, right? So everybody who's the head of household can get $2,000. But then those parents that got multiple kids on their caseload, they were getting an additional $250 for each kid. So if they got 4 kids, that's another $1,000 that you're getting in your household every month. That's $3,000. That's going to go straight to stimulating the economy. Now, one thing you got to know about stimulating the economy is you have to stimulate consumer spending. These are the consumers that spend. They're going to give the money right to the corporations. They never keep money. They don't save. They spend. So if you give them the money's still going to go right to the corporation. But corporations going to have to step their game up, because as you're seeing now with this stimulus program, a lot of people not going back to work because they're making more money from unemployment than they was getting on their job, which means the bottom, or what the government considers the bottom for them, employers are not meeting those standards. They're way below that. So now, if I'm going to give my bottom people this amount of money, and they're going to spend that money with your business, you can afford to up the salary of the people that work for you if you want to keep your employees. Because if we're giving out more money on public assistance than you paying, you're losing all your employees. They're going to say, I'd rather go get a public assistance case. You feel what I'm saying? So everybody has to step their game up, and there's no reason why they shouldn't and can't, because that money is going to trickle up. All the money I give to the people at the bottom is going to be spent to these businesses, and instead of keep reporting these record number profits, you don't need to keep doing that. Report that your employees are happy and well paid and don't want to go nowhere because you're paying them more money because you're making more money.
So Aaron, where would the funding come from for this initiative?
The funding is coming from the government, man. Where does the funding come from when they keep doing these stimulus packages and giving the money directly to the corporations, right? For one, that's where it's coming from, the government. But let's put it like this. There's going to be more money coming because now, I mean, this might sound crazy to you, but as the mayor, for me, Wall Street got to pay taxes. You make more money than everybody in the world. Why you can't afford to pay your taxes like everybody else? Why you get to go free while everybody else has to pay? No. Either you pay taxes or you move to New Jersey. And you don't want to do that because you make all your money because you're here in New York. New York need her money now. Besides this little bit of stuff I'm telling you about, we're going to be doing some record number community development and building stuff. New York needs her money so that this activity can be funded. This activity costs money. The money got to come from somewhere. So all these companies in New York that's making these trillions of dollars now, ain't no loopholes, ain't no tax loopholes, ain't no special consideration. Like, you might could just call me ignorant. I don't understand that. You got to pay. Everybody else got to pay. You got to pay too. Straight like that, man. And the money they making, I guarantee you their taxes will be less than the money they're squandering and wasting. Now, also, say for what I just explained to you for the benefits with welfare, they can afford that on their own right now. All they got to do is cut out all of the stealing that's going on with upper management. Nobody want to ever talk about that. These guys steal so much money and then turn around and create these reports on how difficult it is to serve the clients. Well, it wouldn't be that difficult to serve them if you use the money for where it's supposed to go to. You study trying to steal most of the money and use less of it for where it's supposed to go. They broke up a whole department while I was there. It was called MOT, M-O-T, Mobile Outreach Team. They broke us up so abruptly that they didn't even know what to do with the workers. They were trying to figure out where the place is, and then they offered everybody in the department who they just placed a $15,000 pay increase, except me, which is discrimination. And that's only because I got a big mouth and I was saying, oh, y'all trying to get us out of here and break everything up to throw a smoke screen and get rid of the paper trail, because I anticipate some auditors must be on their way to see what's going on with this money over here. I guess I was hitting a nerve talking the stuff that I was talking. And so, you know, they always have a way of penalizing a person who they want to make an example of, right? And I don't mind being that person because I like talking the truth and I like standing my ground if I feel I'm right. If I'm not, you prove me wrong. Don't try to abuse your authority to shut me down because you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. Nobody else could get away with that. See, and this is why I want to be mad, because like I'm telling you right now, I'm not coming through as a nice dude. People not going, I have a very nice side. Like, I guess I'm kind of very polarized because when I'm being nice, people love me to be around. They'll sit and tell me their story. And I guess I have a very charismatic side when I'm like that. But I have a very fiery side, man, that when I think something is going wrong and you think you're going to get away with it and you think you're going to abuse some weaker person, that don't sit well with me. Like, pick an opponent that's a worthy opponent. Don't pick on the little people. And so a lot of our communities are being bullied by bullies. And I tell people like this, bullies only speak one language. If you don't speak their language, you can't communicate with them. They don't speak love and peace and understanding. They don't talk that. So if you don't talk their language, you can't communicate with them. I talk their language. And so when I come, a lot of them always end up saying, I didn't say nothing. You don't have to say nothing. Your eyes talk more than your mouth sometimes. It's how you was looking at me. You feel me? So either you fix that or we're going to finish the conversation. They don't like when they deal with somebody who can speak that language with them. And that's what the community need right now. We need somebody to stand up to these political bullies that's coming and feeling like nobody could do nothing to them. You're going to have some new people coming. I'm going to set a new precedent with this politics, and younger people going to come behind me knowing they don't have to be no special kind of way. They could be themselves. As long as they have good intentions for the community, they have good ideas, and they can get people to trust and believe in them, they're going to come and start getting in this politics. And the game about to change. And there's going to be a street element in there. And nobody wants to deal with the street, especially when we have access to the same resources you got. You feel me? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to stop all of that, man. All of that's not going to happen while I'm in there. They're not going to abuse my fellow New Yorkers. They're not going to keep compromising our quality of life. And that's why I know if I'm elected mayor of New York City, people are going to be very happy. Because I'm going to be somebody, like I said, a disruptor, a regulator, and an enforcer. And all you got to do is show me. Like, I want to create a program that easily make the police safe and the people safe. You see a police officer out there abusing and doing something he shouldn't be, you call my office. I'm going to call my commissioner. I'm gonna say call him in, tell him to clock out for the rest of the day. He's finished for the rest of the day. Now he don't get no more money for the day. He don't want that to keep happening. Call in, come to the station and clock out, my dude. You finished for today. You want to be out there abusing your authority with that badge? You ain't eating. You ain't going to eat. And every day you do that, we calling you in, and you ain't going to have a lot of time to keep doing that. But we're going to have somewhere to start to let you know we are watching you. People are telling, and we have a way that we're going to intervene just to give you a warning. Come on down to the station, clock out, go home to see if you feel better tomorrow, man.
So, Aaron, yeah, I feel you. I feel you. I feel something. You know, but there are a plethora of other issues involved here, especially we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? Or recovering from a pandemic. So what are some of those other issues that you feel are very important and, more importantly, addressable by you? And I'm giving you the platform here, so please feel free to talk. There are so many.
Okay, one of the other things that I was building on, it was called Habitat. Habitat is a community development program that I wanted to put together that would address homelessness, unemployment, and this mental health issue that everybody said we're dealing with. Now, like I said, I'm a creative problem solver, and I'm kind of unorthodox, but see if you relate to this. A lot of people are not thinking of what's going to be the future economy of New York for New Yorkers. Like, what job is going to be available for you to go and get and support yourself and your family? Because when automation comes and this technology kick in, a lot of jobs are going to be eliminated. You're not even going to be at a job at taxi. You're not working in a factory. So where are people going to make a living? Right? In my opinion, especially for New York City, the future economy is going to be tourism. Tourism is going to be the big business in New York. Now, that is only because New York is one of the few places in the world you can go to be exposed to so many variety and diversity of cultures and nationalities. That's why people love it here. You know, you go to Little Italy, you go to Chinatown, you go to Flatbush, you be with the Jamaicans, and there's a culture around each of these communities. Well, my plan is to build around each of these cultures and nationalities like Walt Disney. It needs to look clean and purposely developed for the tourists, right? Now, I hear a lot of people every time they talk about the technology and automation and all that, they talk about this barrier towards employment with training and education. You've got to train everybody to learn how to, that's new, you know. A lot of people don't understand that, coding and all of that. Well, you don't have to educate and train anybody for their culture. They know it better than you, right? So if we built these communities around each of these different cultural nationalities, a Chinese habitat, an Italian habitat, an Irish habitat, all of these different nationalities, we're going to create a habitat. Habitat to me is just another name for a neighborhood. Yes? So I want to build these neighborhoods with these tall buildings and whatever, shopping areas, museums, parks. We have to be very green. Anything being built right now going forward, it should be very green. They should always have that in mind because everybody's complaining about the atmosphere and everything. And that's because we're not taking enough time to respect the natural environment the way it should be. So we should always be making it green. But you create this whole environment that can support a community. Now, all of these high rises that I want to build, I only want to fill them 25 to 35% filled. The rest is vacant. Why is they vacant? Because that's going to be hotels for the tourists that's coming to be in that neighborhood for that community, for that nationality, for that culture, right? We're going to fill it with people of that nationality. That's going to address some of the homelessness, right? But once you fill it, we need to stop talking about affordable housing. That doesn't exist. That's an imaginary thing. There's no such thing as affordable housing because real estate's never going to go down and be able to come down down to somebody who's not making enough money, right? That's why it has to keep being subsidized. It's only going to keep going up. We need afforded housing. Afforded housing, if we put them somewhere, we have to give them a way to afford to live there. Not the opposite way, make it affordable to a little bit of money that they don't have. Mm-hmm. You put them there, you make sure they're making enough money to be there.
Interesting distinction, yes.
When we move people into these habitats, not only do they become the resident, now you working. You are the people that's going to serve all of those tourists that's coming to hang around you with your culture. When they need room service, they're calling you. Everything they need, they're calling you. So not only you live there, you work there. That's how you supporting yourself now. You guaranteed that job. Only thing we have to give them is a little training on hospitality. Everybody. And all of these habitats will start to learn. Because, say for instance, Jamaicans, the Jamaican habitat. Jamaicans have a little attitude with them, with their little, you might find a little standoffish, right? They're a little rough around the edges. But people like that. If they like the authentic Jamaican, you expecting that. But the Jamaicans will start to realize, just like every other habitat, because it's going to become competitive. They're going to get reports on how the other habitats are doing. And once they see who's doing really well, they're going to want to do well like them. They're going to go, why they're doing so well? Why they getting so many visitors and we're not? And they're going to realize it's how you treat your guests. It's what kind of experience you give those tourists when they come there. And they'll adjust to improve on their treatment of these tourists and these guests. And it'll fix itself. But these are businesses now. These are communities in the business, and also this. The mental health. Now, mental health has to be dissected. There's some mental health just because it's big business. There's a lot of pharmaceutical companies that just want people diagnosed with mental illness so they can give them the medicines and get that money. That's not really a mental illness. That's manipulated. And then there's a demographic of people that are mentally ill because America are trying to strip them of their identity. Have you ever seen this movie, Trading Places, with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd?
I have, yes.
Okay. One of my favorites. Now, in that movie is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. They stripped Dan Aykroyd of his identity and took his livelihood. And what happened to that gentleman? Didn't he not go insane? Right?
Yes, he definitely had issues.
He went crazy. Right, he went crazy through that movie. And I'm sure this is a lot to do with the truth. You take a person's identity and you don't give them a livelihood to sustain themselves and their family, they're going to go into a state of mental illness because you just want to escape reality that you're not able to make it, right? Now, by the end of that movie, they gave him back his identity and they gave him back his livelihood. And didn't that mental illness just melt off of him? Didn't it just evaporate away? Because that's showing you. Once you let a person keep once you let a person keep their identity and you let them use that as a way to make a living, there's something about that when a person can have their identity and they can have pride and they can make a way to take care of themselves, and in that state of mind, that mental health illness that you see in a lot of people, it will be gone. Because that's the mental health that's the mental health issue that they're having, is that America is stripping away their identity and not replacing it with something that could give them a livelihood. Now, you don't know who you are and you don't have a way to take care of yourself. What else are you going to do but go lose your mind? Right?
What are some of your ideas for giving back people their identity so that they have a stronger mental health, that they feel good about themselves, sense of purpose?
When we create these habitats, right, you can get a job not only keeping your identity is the business. Your nationality and your culture is what people coming to visit you for. This is what they spending money in your habitat for. If you're Jamaican, now listen to this. It's weird because the technology and everything, the older you are, the less valuable you are. right? They usually value the younger people more because they're usually more able to pick up the new technology and everything, right? Old people are stuck in their old ways. But and what I'm talking about with the habitat, the older people are the more valuable because they more know the culture and the nationality more than anybody else. They bring the authenticity more than anybody else. You can't tell your mother more about your nationality and your culture. Your mother look at you like you crazy. She showed you, right? Your mother and your father. So imagine having a whole community that's built around this culture and nationality identity, where the old people are now valued, being looked up to, being consulted with on how it should be to be more authentic. It's pride that comes with that, and it's pride is going to circulate through that whole community. It's going back to being a village. You have to respect the elders, man. They have a value. This country is making us look down on our elders and have less value for them. No, we can't do that. These people are valuable, man. Now, if we create something that shows their value, like this habitat, now you go to the Irish habitat. Those old Irish people going to show you what the Irish culture is. You go to the Polish habitat. Those old Polish people going to the Russian habitat. Those old Russian people going to show you what the Russian culture is. And that's what people are coming to New York for. They want the diversity of all of these nationalities. Now, I couldn't create all the habitats in 2 terms, even if I got 2 terms. So what I would do is create a model. And the model I'm going to create is going to be called the hip-hop habitat. Because everybody knows hip-hop is a cash cow in my community, right? But we always just look at it from the musical perspective.
Right.
Nobody's looking at it as it's a cultural thing. People come to study. I'm gonna call them hip hoppers. They study how we dress. They study how we dance. Where we go to dance. Where we club at. Where we go to eat. So if I create a habitat that had all of that in there, the clothing stores you want to shop at, the clubs, of course, the living spaces and the hotel spaces. Now, when they come to our community to study us, they don't have to leave and take all that tourist money back to Manhattan and spend it there. They can stay right in our community and spend that tourist money in our community. And that's what we need. You feel me?
I feel
and they're going to be serviced by the people they're coming to study. So they're going to enjoy that even more. Now, I'm going to create a hip-hop habitat in all 5 boroughs. Why am I going to do that even though it's the same concept? When you go to Brooklyn, Harlem, Queens, the Bronx, even though it's black people in all of those boroughs, they're slightly different from each other. It's like each of these boroughs adds their own seasoning. So Brooklyn black people are different from Bronx black people. Bronx black people are a little different from Harlem black people. Like you will hear these people say swagger. We got a different swagger. Because there's a difference in the culture just being in that borough. So even though it's the same concept, tourists will come and visit all of them because there's a slight difference in each of these habitats. Each of these hip-hop habitats are a little different. And so you will have traffic going, and that would make even the tourists a little more excited because you don't want to come to a destination and only have one place to go, right? So now, just within that one concept, they'll come to New York and go to all 5 of those and spend money and stay a little bit of time in all 5 of those communities. And those people in those communities will benefit from that traffic, from that tourism. And so there's an economy created right there just from establishing that the locals could benefit from, not just Manhattan benefiting from tourism money. And now we created an economy that can sustain people for the future when that automation and technology kicks in. Because tourism is going to be the big thing. All those people that's selling merchandise, food, clothes, whatever it is that they do that contribute to their culture, it'll have a market because those tourists are coming here to be exposed to that. And we have to kind of think along those lines. We have to think futuristic. How are people going to sustain themselves? Because you don't want to go all the way into subsidization. And that's like, what they call that? I forgot what they call that when the government, socialism. You don't want a socialist government where you just have to take care of everybody, right? You have to maintain some kind of way for people to have a livelihood to support themselves without all of this extraordinary training that only the young people could pick up. And those are some of my ideas with that kind of stuff right there. Another idea I have is to create a website. I already started it, and I would assign it to New York City. It's called The Nonsense. TheNonsense.com. I'm already talking with developers to develop it, right? A lot of problems are occurring with these social media websites like Facebook and Instagram, and they're bumping heads with the government, right? Because it's their site. You can't tell them how to run their site, but it has so much valuable information that the government wants, right? So what if the government had their own website? You just, like Donald Trump should have been thought of this. He's trying to fight Facebook to get on their site. No, you get developers. It's not proprietary. All of these websites are exactly the same. The only thing different is the name now. They do all the same stuff. Only the name is different, right? So you can get all that technology just by finding the engineers who know that technology. So you get those engineers, you build the website, and I created The Nonsense because one of the big issues with the website that everybody seems to be having a problem with is being censored. Everybody's complaining, even Donald Trump. That was his big thing. You're censoring me. Why are you censoring me? What am I doing that you should censor me, right? We have laws that limit language. Within the boundaries of those laws, people should be able to say whatever they want to say without breaking those laws, right? So I developed this idea called thenonsense.com, which is a platform where you could go and freely express yourself without fear of being censored. Now, I believe I would get a lot of traction from people who's having a problem with being censored. And you come there and you can do what you want, and it's free because New York owns it. They're going to let you go in there for free because all New York wants is the most traffic so they can just follow data and information. You see what I'm saying? So now you create a platform where all these people can come for free and do exactly what they want to do. Videos, pictures, liking, whatever they do. I have some other proprietary stuff that I wanted to add to it that they're not doing, but I want to go into that. I'll tell you one. One of them was called what is that when you get the public to vote on something?
We call it different things. You can take a survey. You can take
not the survey, a referendum. I was going to add a referendum element to the website, right? Because one of the things that I didn't like was when these politicians from the Democratic side and the Republican side were playing ping pong with the stimulus package while people were starving.
Yes.
They didn't have money, and these guys are playing ping pong, sending it back and forth.
That was a good way of putting it.
Yeah, so I said we need to do a referendum on freezing their salaries and their pay so they can feel what we're feeling and keep it frozen until we have another referendum to replace it. But I didn't know how to start the referendum. So I was want to have a feature on the website where one person could start the referendum just from an idea. And all I have to do is pick up enough traction with enough people supporting it. And once enough people get into it, you create the referendum right there. Because referendum is based on the numbers, I'm assuming. So we know the numbers. Once you got enough people on that site, you know what's going to be a majority of those people. If a majority of those people get involved on an initiated referendum, that referendum is going to take hold to go into effect. And then politicians will have to pay attention to the voice of the people. Now, that's one of the features, but I want to create this website so that people could use it and the New York could benefit from the information, right? And it's a win-win situation. See, a lot of people are not thinking of little ideas like this. But you have to be in the situation that the people are in. You have to be suffering the same thing. You have to be going through what they're going through to see where the real issues that they're complaining about that's compromising their quality of life.
That's an interesting yet powerful approach.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Bring them together so they suffer the same way. And it's an impetus to make a decision, right?
Yes, sir. You know, like me being in my situation, you know, just recently being wrongfully terminated. Then seeing how they handle your unemployment. They delayed my unemployment so long, it really affected my campaign. Because I'm financing my own campaign. I don't have no financing. I'm so new at this. I'm not affiliated with no special interest groups or organizations that's backing me. So that affected my campaign. And it's weird that this happens to the people. When they give in these stimulus checks and this money and stuff to corporations, there's no delay. It's never short. There's never a problem. It goes smoothly. So that's why my thing is now, New York is really set up to serve corporations, not the people. That's why I'm coming to say I'm going to be the 110th mayor of New York City, but I'm going to be the first mayor of New York. I'm going to be the first mayor for the people. I'm not being here for the corporation. And it's going to be very obvious. And they're going to have to understand what it feels like when you don't have somebody pulling all the strings for you and giving you all this special consideration. It's time for the people in New York to be served, man. It's time for the people in New York to be served. I had a hospital call me. He said he's doing surveys. He contacting all of the mayoral candidates. And he sounded so, like in a routine, like he was so comfortable, like he was expecting a certain kind of response from me. I listened to him, then I let him know. I said, first of all, I'm not a politician. I'm an intelligence savage from the streets. So I'm going to let you know, when I get in Gracie Mansion, it's not going to be what you're thinking. I'm not expecting everybody to vote. I only want the people to vote for me that I'm going to look out for. Because if you vote for me and you're on the opposite of the track that I'm coming to represent, I don't care that you voted for me. When I catch you do something wrong, I'm going to handle you the same way like you never voted for me. So you shouldn't vote for me if that's the case. And I told him, when I get in there, I'm not funding his hospital. I'm looking for the hospital that has never been funded. I'm looking for the hospital that never had the benefit of receiving any of these type of fundings and stuff like that. These guys have been in the loophole for so long, they should be able to sustain 1 or 2 terms without no funding, unless they misappropriated that money. And that's what I'm assuming will be the case with a lot of them. They should have an abundance of money stashed away where they could afford to miss a term or 2. And the ones who can't, that means you misappropriate that money and you was expecting the game to keep going as usual, right? Until you ran into somebody like me who's specifically coming to look for who got money last term, who got money from de Blasio. You ain't getting money this time. Who didn't get money last time? Come see me. You up. You up next. This is your turn. This is what I'm coming to do. And the paperwork says everything. You can't hide the paperwork. It's going to say if you got money, if you benefited from all these other mayor candidates from before me, you ain't getting none when I get in there. I'm looking for all those little broken down engines, all those little broken down organizations struggling that y'all think, oh, well, they never received any money anyways, but they should be able to, they should be okay. They should be able to survive. Well, why should they? Why shouldn't they have a day? This is another thing that I'm doing, man. A lot of violence on the street. A lot of violence on the street from these young people. A lot of violence on these streets from these young people because they don't feel loved. They feel like nobody don't care about them. And when you don't feel loved, you feel like nobody care about you, you're going to go on the street and wild out. I know that personally. And that's why I could go on the street and deal with these young people, because I know deep down in my heart where they coming from. And I got the same look in my eye when I see them. So I let them know. Control yourself around me because I'll do something to you the same way you think you're going to do something to me. Right? But I'm not going to never initiate that. And if you give me a chance, I'm going to help show you another way. Now, I'm going to fund anybody who start a program spending some time with these kids. I don't care if you just take them out to the movies on the weekend, you take them out to dinner, to a play, You take them out shopping to buy a bow tie and the white shirt to see how it looks and a different look so we could diversify.
To dress to where they want to go, right?
Right, exactly. You can't keep dressing street because that street look is weaponized, whether they know it or not. So that's the only look that you got. You can easily be a victim of that and nobody's going to care about you. But if you have some other looks where people is like, no, that's the same young man on Sundays I see with the bow tie. You need some old people to say that so that people care about you when they hear you was in a situation. You know, some of these kids, you know, when people hear that they was in a situation, they feel relieved. Wow, that was that wild kid. That was that bad kid always wearing his pants off his butt. I'm so happy he gone.
Yes, it's a sad fact of reality that we do judge a book by its cover, don't we, Aaron?
Exactly. So we have to diversify these looks, but at the end of the day, we need to spend some time with these young people to let them know they work. They worthy. We love them. They important. They valuable. And only by spending time with them is they going to feel that. So anybody who are willing to create a program to do that, I'm funding it. I don't care if it works or not. Everybody deserves a chance to give it a shot, man. Everybody deserves a chance to give it a shot, whether it works or not. And after that, a lot of people won't have no regret. They'll be like, well, I tried and it didn't work, but I was able to I had a chance, right? So all of these things matter, man. And all of them is going to have an effect on the street. You know, all these young people, and they have all these different people they could go to. They'll be like, yo, let's go to the movie. Let's go to a play. Yo, you want to go shopping? You want to get some gear? And they just see that coming from all these different places. They're going to feel crazy going outside to act wild. They're going to be, I'm going to hurt somebody that's trying to help me. Right now, they go outside. They feel like nobody's trying to help them, so they don't care who becomes the victim. Because to them, everybody ain't got nothing good for them. But when you see all these people trying to do something for you, you're going to feel a way going outside just to wild out randomly. Because you're like, yo, these could be the people that's trying to go take me out. Or they got these programs for us now. Like, yo, don't wild out, son. These are good people. It's going to have an effect, man. So these are like some of the little ideas I have. They little ideas, but they're going to have a grand effect on the community. And it's going to increase the quality of life of New York in general. And it's going to increase tourism. Because it's the vibe that New York needs to have. That once New York has that vibe, we already the crown jewel of the world. New York is the crown jewel of the world, regardless of what anybody thinks. Because America is the crown jewel of the world, and New York City is the crown jewel of America. Right? So New York needs to set the example. New York is the only place in the world that our tradition is not based on anything in the past. The tradition of New York is always the future. Did you realize that?
No, I didn't know.
The tradition of New York City is the future. Everybody looks to New York to see what's going to be for tomorrow. So each of these habitats that we create, it shows. See, like say Italian, right? If you want to know Italian tradition, you go to Italy. Their tradition is grounded in the past of everything that made Italy what it is from the past to today, right? But you will come to New York to see what would be the tradition of Italy for tomorrow. New York will show you what Italians are going to be for tomorrow. New York is going to show you what Polish people are going to be for tomorrow. New York is going to be where you come to see what China is going to be for tomorrow. You want to see what China was yesterday, you go to China. You want to see what China is going to be for tomorrow, people are going to come to New York for that. Our tradition is the future. People look to us to know what tomorrow is going to be.
That's an interesting perspective, Aaron. That's very interesting perspective.
That's what it is.
I think on that note, Aaron, we should wrap up this interview. But is there anything else you want to proclaim or explain or present?
Well, all I'm going to say is this, man. I'm just winging it, right? I got to go get these 4,000 signatures.
Okay.
My weapon that I'm using of choice, of course, is creative problem solving. So what I came up with was going on the train. So you see the panhandlers on the train and all of that stuff, and they get to say what they want to say, and people are kind of like hostage on the train. That's one place where they're not moving until they stop come. And that's what I thought was the real advantage. I can go on the train, I can hand out my petition to a bunch of different people. I can say something that make a lot of sense to them, and then all of them will start filling that thing out, and I can go back and collect them and get a bunch of signatures in each car. So it's really very doable to get these 4,000 signatures within these next 10 days by going on all of these subways and doing this very unprecedented, unorthodox thing that I'm going to do. So I'm excited about that.
Unorthodox, unprecedented is unorthodox are two terms I think apply to you very, very well, Aaron. And on that note, as I was saying, I would like to thank you for appearing on our show, The Etiquette Show. Aaron Benjamin Miles, running for the 110th mayoral ship of New York City. And in his words, perhaps the first mayor for New Yorkers, a man whose platform is as a disruptor, a regulator, and an enforcer, and who dresses the way he wants to go, where he wants to go. So Aaron Benjamin Miles, on behalf of The Etiquette Show, I'm Dr. Sam Dubé. Thank you so much for appearing to us and with us today, and I wish you all the best.
Hey, Dr. Dubé, I really appreciate you.
Call me Sam. Call me Sam.
Sam, I'd like to thank you and the show for giving me the opportunity, to express these ideas. This is the first interview that I've done, and keep my fingers crossed. If I can become the next mayor of New York City, I'll be trying to meet with you again and see if you have any ideas or things that you want to be addressed. But I'm going to be a very accessible mayor. I'm going to be very open to ideas, and anywhere that you feel you're being violated or abused, I don't care if it's by corporation. You can call me, let me know, and if it's within my power, that's going to be a minimum danger. Bad.
Well, that's wonderful, Aaron. Thank you so much. And on that note, you take care and be safe.
Hey, you.
Thank you.